Update 37.2 is now live with the second beta, and while the first beta was mainly all about the Mariner class, the second beta bring in quite some interesting changes. Of course, there's changes to the Mariner, but there's also changes to other classes. So as usual in this video, I'm going to go through all the new changes. And the very first thing I'm going to talk about is something that's pretty important. There's been some pretty big changes to some of the buff interactions with some skills in the game, and I'm going to try to explain it as best as I can. Basically, what this means is that there's a few skills who give the same effect, and these effects do not stack with each other. As you can see on the right hand side, the effects gained are the major rent armor. They all gain major rent armor. And from the left, we can see which skills give this effect. For the Mariner class is Caustic Brew, giving the major rent armor for a total of 30 seconds. There is Ancient Craft, giving the major rent armor for a total of 35 seconds. And the last one is the Burglar. So Mariner, Loremaster, and Burglar. Burglar gains their major rent debuff by using Trickster and a trick, which gives you the major rent armor for 20 seconds. So the Loremaster gets a total of 35 seconds of major rent armor, Mariner is 30 seconds, and the Burglar is only 20 seconds. So keep in mind that if there's already a Trickster on the target with the major rent armor debuff, and you throw Ancient Craft on the target, it's not going to stack with the major rent from Trickster. So the idea will be that if you have all these classes in your raid, you want to try to somehow chain these debuffs or use them on different targets. The other buff we're going to talk about is the renewed defenses, and people might notice that the Oathbreaker's Shame is part of this. This used to be a 3-minute immunity for the Oathbreaker's Shame. It has now been changed to just be renewed defenses for 45 seconds, and the skills that give this debuff will be the Oathbreaker's Shame. For the Red Captain, there is the Blue Mariner, the Breaking of Thangorodrim, and there's the Blue Loremaster, a Murder of Crows. So basically what this means is that if you use Oathbreakers, the target will get the renewed defenses for 45 seconds, or if you use the Breaking of Thangorodrim or a Murder of Crows, they will all get the renewed defenses, basically ensuring that you don't really chain the Oathbreaker's Shame on the target. Like, the idea is that you don't use Oathbreakers, then the Breaking of Thangorodrim, then a Murder of Crows in quick succession. If you use one of these really powerful buffs, then you have to wait 45 seconds. Another example will be using Oathbreaker's Shame and resetting it with Call to Greatness. You will still have to wait the 45 seconds before using another Oathbreaker's Shame on the same target. Just making sure that these debuffs don't really stack together or can be changed in succession, because that would be too powerful. So that's another thing to look out for with the buff interactions. And the very last buff we're going to talk about is the Minor Rent Armor. Minor Rent Armor reduces tactical mitigations by 10%. And as you can see, there's two skills that will give this effect. It is the Pitch Pot from the Mariner, and it is the Sticky Tar from the Loremaster. So obviously the Sticky Tar is a puddle that you place on the ground, and it lasts for 1 minute. So 1 minute of this debuff if you have the targets in the puddle. And Pitch Pot is something you can throw at enemies, and it only lasts for 20 seconds. But these two debuffs will not stack with each other. We have a couple of changes for the Burglar class. The first one we already took a look at, the Trickster, and then using a trick will now put the major rent debuff on the target for 20 seconds, reducing the target's mitigations by 10%, both mitigations for 20 seconds. The Burglar also gets a change to the Trick Enrage. Using the Trick Enrage will make targets unable to make most of ranged attacks. So this will work just as the Loremaster Raven Distraction, meaning that if you have an archer standing over there shooting at the group, you can throw the Trick Enrage on the archer, and the archer will be forced to move into melee range. So a pretty nice change for the yellow Burglar. There has also been a change to a red line trait set bonus. Location is everything, which is the 5th trait set bonus. This trait used to give the red Burglar a mitigation shred to enemies, but this has instead been changed to just giving 10% critical response skill damage. So no more bypassing mitigations. As we can see, there's still some writing about the bypassing their defenses in the trait description, but it no longer bypasses mitigations, instead just 10% critical response skill damage. We have a few changes to the champion class as well. There's been a change to the champion's advantage trait. It no longer bypasses mitigations for your blade skills, but instead increases your blade skill damage. And champion in general, for their blade skill, which is AoE skills, champion blade skills have been increased by around 8% in their DPS, and the champion strike skills have been increased by 20%, bringing the champion up a bit. They got hit a little bit hard by the stat crunch, but these damage buff should put the champion back to normal and where they belong. For Guardian, we have a couple of changes. The set bonus trait bolstering blocks used to heal the Guardian for every block that you got, but it now has an internal cooldown of 1 second, so up to once per second. When you block or partially block, you restore 1% of max morale, and I think this is a fine change. This was probably a bit too strong with like every block giving you a heal. It doesn't really weaken the Guardian or anything. It's just a good change in my opinion. Bolstering blocks, now only once per second can it proc the 1% morale heal. And the other change is really simple. The red Guardian was probably a little bit overtuned and has been nerfed by about 5% to their damage. And from what I've seen of some parsers, they still seem like they're maybe a little bit overtuned. Maybe we need to see a little bit more of a nerf on the red Guardian. But for this beta, the Guardian DPS got decreased by about 5%. For the Hunter class, we have a couple of changes as well. Most Hunter skills had their damage increased by 15%. Hunters were also lagging a little bit behind from the stat crunch, and they have had an increase of 15% to their damage. The other change is to the Bodkin Arrows trait. This used to give mitigation bypass to the Hunters, but it now simply increases the induction bow damage by 15% if you put all points into this. A couple of changes for the Lore Master worth mentioning. We already saw them in a way in the beginning of the video with the buff interactions. Ancient Craft will debuff the target's mitigations by 5%, but if you have the Enfeeble trait in yellow line, it will give Ancient Craft the 15% initial, and then after that another 20 seconds of 10%, so 15% both mids and then 10% both mids after that. Sticky Tar has also seen a change. It no longer reduces the fire mitigations of the target, but rather 10% tactical mitigations on the target, with the minor rend armor debuff. And the last change is to the Murder of Crows for Blue Line Loremaster. It now gives 10% miss chance, but 20% incoming damage for 20 seconds, and it does not stack with Oathbreaker's Shame or the breaking of Thangorodrim from the Mariner. When it comes to the Mariner, we have quite a few changes since the last beta. Damage of most Mariner skills have been increased considerably, about 50% for direct skill damage. And I've been trying to play around with Redline a bit, and it seems like on a no-mid dummy, they're around 40k DPS over 3 minutes. So Mariner definitely need more of a DPS increase to be competitive with the other DPSs. Using skills no longer requires you to have a dagger in your offhand slot, so that's no longer an issue. You can now move the balance panel on your UI. On guards, power restore has been improved. The Mariner's healing potency from swordplay combos and toss a bottle have been increased. The North Wind cooldown has been reduced slightly. The cooldown is 1 minute. Faint cooldown has been halved from 20 to 10 seconds. And Thrum of the Sea cooldown has been reduced slightly. You're now able to perma-mess a target with your Daze skill as a Yellow Mariner. The Shanty 4 with haste is now working properly and working as a cooldown where it lasts for 15 seconds and then it will shut down. For 15 seconds you'll see a damage increase, but also like your balance will shift really heavily towards the right side. But after 15 seconds this should shut off, as you can see right there. So this cooldown is now working properly as a Red Mariner when you trade the double time. The red line finisher skill, Flesh, now requires you to be grounded when you use it. The next part of the patch notes is a little bit confusing. It says that Guided by the Stars now increases single target healing by 15% rather than 3% crit. But on the tooltip of Guided by the Star, it says the crit hit chance is 15%. There's no single target critical hit chance on Guided by the Stars, but instead we can see that the South Wind instead now has a 35% single target healing duration on it. I'm not exactly sure if these are working as intended. I feel like the 15% crit hit chance should be what this Guided by the Stars gives, given its really long cooldown. This crit chance is fair in my opinion. And I thought that the South Wind was going to be like the make haste for the Mariner with the run speed buff. So not exactly sure what these skills will do. So for now, we can assume that they're probably not hooked up perfectly. And there's been some mishap happening here. The booming voice trait in Blue Line now has a correct description. It gives the North Wind an increase of the damage to your allies by 5%. We can take a look at this. And using the North Wind as a Blue Mariner gives the Rousing Cry damage buff. Still doesn't show the 5% damage, but it should be a 5% damage increase. So basically mimicking the Red Captain 5% damage buff. If you trade the booming voice in Blue Line, you can get the 5% damage buff to your group, and it does not stack with the Captain's Rousing Cry buff. And finally, for the Mariner class in this build, there's been some fixes, and you can just see the fixes right here. I don't think the fixes are worth looking into, but if you're really interested in these fixes, you can just read them yourself and see what they do. Hey! Hey you! Yeah, you! What do you want? You enjoy my content and you want to support me? Fine, I'll show you how you can do it. I would really appreciate if you like the video and subscribe to my channel. You can also support me through my Ko-fi homepage. If you're playing or looking to play Lord of the Rings online, there is one place you need to be. The Ghyniverse is a Discord server created for the community of the players of Lord of the Rings Online. The server is getting close to 7,000 members, and in this server you'll find tons of helpful information. There's monthly giveaways, easy access to patch notes, you can keep up with my YouTube videos, my streams. If you're a streamer, you can ask for the streamer role and you can announce your streams in the other stream channel. There are discussion channels for pretty much everything, every class, monster players. But the best thing about this server is probably the Gearing Resources tab, where you can find anything from trait lines for every class, every build. There are stat goals, where you can find out what stats you should aim for on your characters. Really helpful information about drop rates from instances, as well as screenshot from all the new loot that appears in the game. If you enjoy Lotro, you should definitely consider joining this server, and hopefully I'll see you in Middle Earth. If you were part of the Ghyniverse already, you might have noticed that another tab appeared at the top, the LFF server. This server is a brand new server that I created, the LFF Ghyniverse. In this server, you can select which servers you want to keep up with, and once you select your server, say you select Arkenstone, you will see the LFF, the kinship advertisement, looking for kinship and trade channels, and there's also voice channels if people want to use those. The LFF channel is basically a looking for fellowship channel where people can post if they need players for the runs, and this way people don't have to be logged into the game to see the chat, they can just instead get a notification on their Discord. There's also a kinship advertisement page where kins can post their kinship advertisement and have people join their kins. And you can also post in the looking for kinship chat if you're looking for a kinship, but make sure to take a look in the kinship advertisement first and look through all the kin to find a suitable kin for you. There's also a trade channel if people want to buy or sell stuff that you can use. Hopefully you'll consider joining this server to bring the community even more together, not just in the game, but also outside of the game.